Welcome back, everybody. My name is Dr. Aviva Gaskill, and today I'm going to be speaking with Drs. Jamie Zuckerman about dating and rejection. Subscribe to Bet Me a Date on YouTube for more dating challenges that can be tough to overcome, for videos every Sunday and Thursday at 6 p.m. My name is Dr. Aviva Gaskill. I'm a clinical psychologist who's helped dozens of patients overcome dating challenges, but I can't do this work alone. I do it with the support and the help of experts like Dr. Jamie Zuckerman. Welcome, everybody. Today I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Jamie Zuckerman about dating and rejection. So happy 2021. Welcome, Dr. Zuckerman. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank
And
you
your
for
work?
having me. Happy New Year.
Yes.
So my name is Dr. Jamie Zuckerman. I'm a clinical psychologist outside of Philadelphia, and I am in private practice. I specialize in adults with depression, anxiety, relationship issues, and I have a subspecialty in clinical health psychology. So I see people who are adjusting to medical illnesses. More specifically, I see a lot of neurological issues like epilepsy and MS and things like that.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Um, can you tell us a little bit, is there like a dating rejection mindset or people who like chronically get rejected in dating? Like, are there trends that you see in those folks?
Sure. So I think the biggest trend would be that there's certain patterns that people have, right? Certain almost like behavioral routines that people get into, which start way early on in life, what in childhood, what they witness, what they model, what their parents' relationship is like, what loving relationships they see in their lives, even if it's not their parents. And that translates into adulthood, and it kind of sets the blueprint for how we view our relationships, particularly romantic relationships and dating. And if you are of the mindset, let's say, that you've never felt that you received love growing up, or it was
Mm.
inconsistent in terms of what you would get, hate love, yelling, arguing, then love, your your outlook or your blueprint on relationships may not be the healthiest. And so what happens is we tend to attract people that remind us of our patterns, even if they're unhealthy. So we get into
Mhm.
the habit of seeking out what's familiar rather than what's healthy. And when people do that, they'll come into my office and they'll say, I keep attracting the wrong type of partner. I keep
Yeah.
attracting the same type of person over and over and over again. And when I hear that, I know pretty much that it's probably a pattern that they have that they don't realize that they have. And they're kind of, we hear about the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So if we
Mhm.
think we're not worthy of love, that's what we were taught growing up, or that's what the message we internalized growing up, we're going to tend to seek out people who kind of fit that pattern for us because it's familiar.
Yeah. And so that's so great. And I think, yeah, I think sometimes even like a swinging like a pendulum, like they'll go from one
One extreme.
extreme to the other, right? And I wonder if, as a psychologist, how do you help folks like break those patterns up and change those patterns up?
First thing is, when people come in, typically they're focused on the actual person they're with or the breakup they just experienced. They're not
Mhm.
usually looking at their dating history from kind of a more objective, holistic standpoint.
Yeah.
So I help them first kind of identify in a very non-judgmental way that out of all the people that they've attracted over their lives, and that can include friends as well, that they're kind of the common denominator in this. And
Hmm.
what is it about them that keeps attracting these type of people? And once they kind of get the idea and gain a sense of awareness that they do have a role in who they're choosing, it actually is a very empowering feeling, because then they know that they have some control over who they choose to pick. And when they realize that there's other ways of acting or other ways of interacting with people, it gives them options. And when people have options, they, as you know, they naturally feel less anxious.
Yeah.
So I will usually work with them to identify, we kind of dive into their upbringing, what patterns they were familiar with, what the interactions were like between their family members, not just parents, but also siblings,
Mhm.
grandparents, whoever was in their primary environment. And then look at their relationships they have outside of their family as an adult, their friends, their dating relationships, and really kind of break down the similarities between all of those people. So if you're used to going left and everyone else goes right, and you go left and you go right, they go right, you have this dance that you've been used to for so long. It's
Mhm.
like being left-handed your whole life. And I'm basically telling them your left hand is now broken. You need to start getting used to using your right hands. And
Yeah.
so we introduce new styles of relating to people very slowly so that they can actually see the difference. If they change the slightest behavior, that they get a different response. And once they start to get that kind of feeling of, okay, I can control this, I can control how I want to respond to people, the biggest thing is pausing in the moment and being very mindful of what your familiar pattern would look like
Yeah.
versus a new healthier pattern, and getting them to be very mindful and aware in the moment of that pause so that they can make healthier decisions.
But I really love what you said about like this. It's almost like there's a light bulb that goes off that it's like, oh, I actually am in control of who I date. It's not that like I just keep getting rejected and I get bowled over, like, like I get bulldozed over. I can be in control and choose who I date so that I don't keep having this feeling of getting run over.
And it's
Um,
uncomfortable for people. It's not, an
yeah.
empowering feeling, but it's also super uncomfortable because if you've been taught your entire life, let's say that, um, I'll use the example you did with the going back and forth, the pendulum. So I'll
Yeah.
give kind of an alternate response sometimes that people develop. So let's say growing up, you were told you weren't good enough. You were told no matter what you did, it didn't matter. You were kind of felt invisible.
Mhm.
Um, and you were really kind of beat down as far as your self-esteem.
Mhm.
If we kind of look at it from the opposite ends, that person may over time learn to overcompensate for that, right?
Mhm.
And kind of develop this sense of this facade of everything I do is perfect, everything I do is great, because
Mhm.
that's how they've coped with it. So they may seek out people who purposely will put their needs first
Mhm.
above their own, right? And so when people with that kind of style seek these people out, they tend to get very bored or very tired very quickly. And
Mhm.
they'll say, I can't hold a relationship. I don't know what it is. Everyone annoys me after 6 months. I can't figure it out.
Mhm.
And so I will work with them on identifying that. But the uncomfortable thing that happens is in order to do that, you have to realize what you're masking, what you're avoiding by continuing these patterns. And a lot of
Mhm.
with the discomfort of you feel like you don't deserve love or you feel like you don't deserve attention, and that's uncomfortable for people. That's kind of
Yeah.
when it we start to kind of dive into more of sitting with emotions, sitting with discomfort, and strategies to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Stick around for more information from Dr. Zuckerman on how to deal with dating rejection. What are some things people can do like at home on their own, whether they're working with a therapist or not, but what are some things like to combat rejection and sort of
Sure.
managing rejection in dating?
Sure. So, one of the things that I think is very helpful that I do in sessions with people is I will have them draw out for me, kind of, and people can do this at home, draw out a bunch of X's, right? And each X is a person in your immediate dynamic.
Mhm.
And label each one with a person's name.
Mhm.
And throughout the day or throughout the week, just kind of be mindful of the interactions you have with them and draw them out with arrows. So when this person says this to this person, then this says this to this person. And then if this person shifts gears ever so slightly to try to get a different response, watch what happens with person over here. What do
Mhm.
they do? Do they come back full force? Do they go to your sister now? And
Mhm.
now your sister's angry because you're not, let's say, the scapegoat anymore. And so now your sister has to deal with it, which is not how this dynamic works. And everybody's now off balance.
Mhm.
And you can see how your slight change in behavior affects every other dynamic in the family and what people do in response to that. So you can
Yeah.
better predict. And if I know if I do this, it's going to my sister at some point. And so
Yeah.
you kind of, as I said, predict what's going to happen. And it's, again, it gives you a little bit of sense of control over your dynamics, and something people can definitely do at home. And it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
eye opening because it's a lot of things you
Yes.
don't realize.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you get into these same patterns, or I know for us, we see our patients get into the same patterns over and over again. And then once they draw it out, or they really are like, their eyes are open to
Yes.
it,
it's
Yes.
like, oh my God,
And
it's
once you
everywhere.
see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, which can be uncomfortable in its
Which
own
is
way, right?
very uncomfortable because a lot of people say, I wish I could go back to burying my head in the sands, but you also weren't happy then. And
Right.
it's important for people to know that you and I, we both have our own patterns. Everybody has their own patterns. It's not a weakness to have them. It's a survival mechanism that worked for you growing up. You needed that. As we transfer into adulthood and we get into more mature relationships, if that pattern doesn't suit us, the healthy thing to do is to, look at it as malleable, look at it as something that we can adjust over time, which leads to healthier relationships. It's when you have that pattern and you don't know that it can shift, you don't know how to shift it, and you keep trying to use that same survival mechanism when you don't require it anymore because the situation doesn't call for that. And so that's when relationships start to kind of butt heads and people start to feel like they're in unhealthy patterns.
Yeah, yeah. This is so helpful, Dr. Zuckerman. Do you have any final tips for us about dating and rejection that people should know?
Yeah, I think keep in mind that, I remember this years ago when I was younger, my mother said this to me that, it's kind of each relationship is kind of a practice round almost. And that to keep in mind that although at the time you feel stuck, and although at the time maybe somewhere in the back of your mind that this is not for you, no relationship needs to be permanent. And every relationship you're in is temporary unless you decide that it's not.
Yeah.
Even if you break up and the relationship's over, a lot of people still feel that the relationship is permanent because they carry it with them. But
Mhm.
until you decide, every relationship is temporary. You're never stuck, and everybody has patterns. It's what gets us through life. So be mindful not to beat yourself up over that. And every pattern you have is learned, which means it can be unlearned.
Yeah.
So everything you're doing can be, it is changeable.
Yeah, yeah. And that is such a nice message to like start 2021 with, like, hope and you don't have to feel rejected forever.
And even if you do feel rejected, rejection's part of dating. I
Yeah.
mean, we've all been rejected and it's a horrible feeling,
Yeah.
but it also is a learning experience and it helps you, see what red flags are going forward. And so
Yeah.
even though it feels crappy, let it feel crappy and use it kind of to propel you forward to not make similar unhealthy choices.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today. Where can people who are interested in finding out more about you and the work that you do find you?
Sure. So I have a website, drjamiezuckerman.com, JAIMEZUCKERMAN, and you can find me on Instagram at Dr._Zuckerman.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Don't forget to check us out on betmeadate.com to meet all of your dating goals. And don't forget to click that like, subscribe, and check out more of our video content on YouTube from Bet Me a Date.